At this hour, jury selection is underway for the first Baltimore police officer to go on trial in the death of Freddie Gray. Officer William G. Porter is charged with involuntary manslaughter, second-degree assault, misconduct in office, and reckless endangerment. Officials say Gray told Porter he could not breathe, but the officer did not assess Gray's condition or call for medical assistance. Gray died a week later of a spinal injury. This trial could determine how trials for the other 5 officers proceed, and Baltimore's police chief says the future of the city is at stake. A lot going on here. Joining me now to discuss this case are CNN correspondent Jean Cazares and former U.S. Assistant State Attorney and legal expert Laura Coates. Thanks for coming on. Jean, to you first here. One of the big questions, of course, with these proceedings we'll answer is whether it's possible to find an impartial jury. Already we're learning, Jean, that every potential juror has said they knew about Freddie Gray's death, not surprising, and that Baltimore reached a settlement with the family. And protesters, as we know, are outside the building. That can be heard inside the courtroom. What is the judge doing to make sure they find an impartial jury here?
A lot is going on, and the judge, first of all, is telling the jurors that they will be anonymous, that their names, their information will not come out, to protect them and to protect the integrity of the trial. Jury selection is right behind me on the 4th floor, and we do want to tell you the information we're getting out of the courtroom is that there are 75 potential jurors right now being questioned, and 40 of them are African American, 33 of them are white, 1 Hispanic, and 1 East Indian. As you said, all of them know about this case. All of them know that a civil settlement in the amount of $6.4 million was given in the last few months to the family of Freddie Gray. Out of the 75, 35 of them, so that's almost 1/2, have been convicted, imprisoned, or have current charges. 26 of them have very strong opinions about this case. Now, once the questions are asked in unison, where they just raise their hands, then they'll go into a conference room where jurors will be individually questioned. But the defense renewed their motion today, and of course this is to preserve it for an appeal if there is a conviction, to change the venue of this case. They don't believe that Baltimore is the right venue to have a fair and impartial jury, but the judge has been adamant from the beginning, saying we've got to try, we've got to believe in this community. William Porter, the first one to go on trial, that's because prosecutors believe a statement that he made is critical to other prosecutions, so they want to try to gain that conviction with him first. And it is where, when he arrives about halfway during that van ride, he asks Freddie Gray if he needs medical attention. Gray responds that he does, and that was communicated, but at that point they did not take him to a hospital. Pam?
And Laura, because this is a case that has gotten so much publicity, and in fact some of the jurors may have been impacted by it, by the curfew and things like that, the protests that went on after the death of Freddie Gray, what happens if they can't find an impartial jury with this pool that they have right now? What would happen then?
Well, one thing that they could do is move it out of Baltimore City, but Jean is absolutely correct. The judge has been adamant about not wanting to do that because they want to have Baltimore residents have an opportunity to be the peers for this jury. But also an option is to have the jury trial go away and have it be a bench trial in front of Judge Williams. Not a particularly attractive option, given the fact that this judge is a former prosecutor for the Department of Justice prosecuting police excessive force and brutality cases. So it's not a very attractive option, but it's one that has served other officers in other jurisdictions. For example, in the Rakia Boyd case in Chicago, when there was a bench trial against that off-duty officer, it had an acquittal as the result. And so it's a possible scenario. But you're absolutely right, Pam. With the settlement, with the curfew, with the rioting, there is not a single juror in that pool who was not impacted and has a strong opinion about the Freddie Gray case.
And you mentioned the change of venue. The judge has already denied a motion from the defense asking for a change of venue. Also, this judge has said, Laura, that the jurors will not be sequestered. Do you think that's unusual for a trial like this, especially considering the protests and disturbances that happened?
It's not so unusual not to sequester. In fact, sequestration is actually an anomaly. It's not really done very often. But when it is done, it's for very high-profile celebrity trials. But it's not the case here, because really an anonymity for each juror should technically be sufficient, and they will be transported likely from a remote location, so they don't have their personal addresses present. But that's going to be one of the biggest issues that every potential juror has, which is my personal safety and whether I'll be harassed. Outside of the courtroom courtroom today, you can hear chants from protesters outside talking about Freddie Gray. These jurors know that although they have anonymous numbers, they will be located, they will likely be identified, and they will have some impact from having their role in a jury selection. In fact, I think over 20 jurors already stood up to say that they have concerns about being a part of the jury pool for those reasons.
Understandably there. Jean, to you now, we've learned that Officer Porter will be the first for the trial. What will happen? Is he going to testify in his own defense? What do we know about that?
Pam, what we know is from a defense motion, they said that very likely William Porter will take the stand in his own defense. Very rarely do you have the defense file a motion just putting it out there that he's going to take the stand, but it appears as though he will to tell his story. And that statement that he gave, he also in that statement said that he wasn't sure if Freddie Gray had jailitis at that time. Was he really that sick? Was he really ill? So it may help the defense to then allow him to really extrapolate on that. But of course, you've also got cross-examination from the prosecution.
All right, Jean Cazares and Laura, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well, the University of Chicago has canceled classes and all campus